of this year of the Goosed Podcast. So it's been a busy year. I think we've recorded 20 odd sessions. This is our 21st, and we've got a great guest for the first episode back. Dermot Frost, the NOC Manager of IP Telecoms. Dermot, would you like to introduce yourself and explain who you are, what you do, and what IP Telecoms actually is?
Yeah, so I'm Dermot, as you said. I work in the NOC, the Network Operations Center in IP Telecom. And so IP Telecom is a business-to-business phone company. So we don't deal with direct customers, sort of individual and domestic. It's all business-based and providing sort of either just trunking to on-prem phone systems. So if you've got a Mitel or a Cisco in your basement that you're running your phones in your office building, we can provide you that connectivity. Or what's happening a lot more is we actually have a cloud-based hosted PBX platform where the devices that are in your office connect out to our service in the cloud and do all your phone calls and all that kind of stuff. And we can talk a lot more about how that all works further on. And so my job is sort of running the infrastructure side of things, making sure all the services are alive and kicking all the time. So don't ask me about pricing or anything to do with commercials, because that's a totally different person. But that's my gig. And I mean, look, I've been here about 5 years now. And before that, I worked in academia in sort of the IT side of things, and then moved into telecoms about 5 years ago. And been sort of working on the
haven't looked back, as they say.
Well, you get so far in academia, and then you go, it's time to move on, or I'll be institutionalized.
I need to go outside again and see what's happening in the world.
Reality.
I'm actually not even going to lie. I remember, like, when I did my master's degree, there is one standout lecture that broke my heart. I was doing international entrepreneurship and business management, and we did a 2-hour lecture on distribution models. So then this dude came in who had a carambola kids. They deliver lunches to school kids. So he was natural first question, what's your delivery infrastructure like? And it was, I put the stuff in my car until I bought a van, and we were all just sitting there going, so cool. The last 2 hours was just
There's a difference between DHL and the lad with the high ace, but reality versus
hilarious. But anyway, back to focus. So as you said, like, how does the system work? Because I suppose most people, when they'd hear about a company like IP Telecoms, they're presuming call centers, Air, Vodafone's call centers. They're presuming that's the natural presumption, which isn't necessarily correct or true.
No. So, I mean, we're a VoIP provider, so it's voice over IP. So there's no, fixed wires or whatever. You piggyback on top of your broadband system. And then each call uses an open standard called SIP, the Session Initiation Protocol, to connect to our servers to say, hey, I want to ring 086 123 4567, and then because we have connectivity to all the other carriers, we can then route that call onto the destination that you needed to get it to. That's a very simplified version of it. But what it does is it provides you with that sort of, removing the old sort of copper wire into your house that had your analog phone from Air. And over time, I mean, the UK are a bit ahead of us on this, but, that old analog infrastructure is going to be retired. In the UK, they sort of set a date, and they've moved it a couple of times, sort of to 2025, 2026. Here, we'll probably be another couple of years down the line until things like NBI and things like that are more rolled out across the country. So there is better coverage of modern internet-based services available throughout the country. But that old sort of little pluggy thing in the corner of your hallway that you used to plug your phone into is on the way out. And certainly for businesses where you have hundreds of lines potentially coming in, that was a very expensive proposition in the old analog system. And now instead you get a 500 meg or 1 gig connection into your building, and you can run hundreds and thousands of calls over those at a fraction of the price that the old analog connections with the PRIs back into the exchange were.
But it makes so much sense because, I suppose the big topic that we're probably going to talk about is Blueface. Because I remember a couple of years ago when I was working in agencies that Blueface was actually what we used, because that way we could have each manager could have essentially an extension, but it was all through a centralized line and just basically choose the extension. Being able to set up all the call diverts. It was a really, really good system, and considering the price that we were paying was I think a quarter what we were paying previously for the old analog system, maybe even cheaper, but it was very
definitely. I mean, a lot cheaper, and it gets rid of, for big, I mean, so for smaller sort of customers where it was, 4, 6, 10 lines maybe into an office, the analog system kind of worked, and you might be in a shared building where there was one connection shared between everybody. But if you were a big company, it got very expensive very quickly, and a quarter of your basement will be taken up with Air's equipment that they sort of forklifted into the basement. And it said now you literally have one piece of fiber running into your building, and then it fans out over your normal computer network that you have in your building to all the end devices. And it's not just, I mean, we sell, phones, physical handsets that people have on desks. So Yealink, Cisco's, people who have seen those in offices, modern sort of VoIP phones. But a lot more people, certainly since the pandemic, have moved to using soft phones. So, pieces of software over the top on their devices, so on their laptop or on their iPads or on their phones, having an app like WhatsApp, but that's more closely sort of connected to your business phone. So you're not actually even having to put out physical devices anymore. You just sort of say, here, download this bit of software, run it on your mobile, and then you get your business calls to your mobile, but over the internet on your Wi-Fi or on your 5G connection on your handset.
Yeah.
And really for businesses where, if you think about consumers, like the landline is dead for consumers. Everybody has a mobile. I mean, my parents-in-law are like in their late 80s, early 90s. They got rid of the landline out of their house in rural Tipperary about 5 or 6 years ago because they went, nobody ever rings us on it. They all just ring us on our mobiles. So, if it's okay for people who are at that age, what hope for the rest of us ever having a landline in our houses ever again? Even though, if you get your, your TV and broadband from something like Virgin, there'll be an analog port in the back of your broadband connection that you can plug one of those crappy old analog handsets into, and you will get a dial tone and you can ring out, but nobody uses them anymore. So from a personal point of view, we're now in the mobile is king era.
Yes.
But from businesses, there's a much more that people want to be able to do. I mean, firstly, it's, they don't want, a business doesn't just go and say, here, ring our, I mean, if you're a standalone sort of sole operator or plumber or an electrician or whatever, you plaster your mobile number on the side of your van and that's your business number. But if you're a solicitor's office, or if you're a bank or something, you want to have a landline because that's what people expect you to have.
Yeah.
And you then also want all those calls to be all within the one system, so that you can track. I mean, what a lot of companies are doing is saying, as a call comes in or as somebody in the company makes a call out, they're putting that into their CRM. So if they're using something like Salesforce or Zoho or one of those sort of systems to track their engagement with their customers, you want every touch with your customer to end up being tracked somewhere. So you can say, oh, I phoned them last Tuesday, I need to send a follow-up email on Friday. That'll be in the CRM. And then there'll be another phone call the following week. Where if you're just doing all that on your mobile, all of that richness is lost. And then sort of your customer, so even though you might give all your salespeople mobiles as part of your company, they still want to use the company's phone system, not just dial it out over Vodafone or Three or whoever your mobile provider is. They want that sort of hook back into a centralized phone system that then is sort of looking as if it's coming out over a landline, because people trust phone calls that come from landlines more than they trust them to come from mobiles. Because we've all seen in the last couple of years the scourge of this is your Amazon delivery phone call that robocalls you randomly as you're going along. So there's that sort of trustworthiness that comes with landlines that is kind of lost from mobiles for people receiving calls, but people who are making calls are on their mobiles all the time. And so you're trying to bridge that divide between the traditional sort of 01, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 086, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And, these sort of modern VoIP systems, and, Blueface, to be fair to them, like, we're one of the early people in the market. They built a really good, easy product to use. And then they kind of got bought out by the Americans about 3 or 4 years ago, and they seem to have kind of lost their way.
Yeah.
And I guess, headquarters in America went, look, we're losing more money over here, or, it's more of a hassle than it's worth. And they surprisingly pulled the plug on it, which, it's a good business to be in, because it's not like the old phone systems where you have a lot of infrastructure that you've invested in, pulling lines everywhere. If you're a VoIP provider, you're kind of piggybacking on other lower level infrastructure providers, like people who are running cables to houses. So we rely a lot on Air, Cyro, BT, and the mobile operators sort of to provide that low level. So if you're sort of in our sort of space, you'd imagine it's not a very capital intensive business to stay in. So as long as you've got good people to run your systems, then it kind of should take care of itself. But apparently I don't understand the business side of it, but from a technical point of view, it's not rocket science.
It probably comes down to costing, because like you make a very good point about the security around the landline. Like I know myself, if I get a phone call from a mobile number that I don't know, I'm not answering. I don't answer it anymore now. And there has been times when it's been phone calls that I probably should have taken, but the natural reaction now is that's a scam. I'm not answering it. Whereas if a landline rings me, I'm not going to lie. First instinct is panic, because it's like, who official is looking for me right now? Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, the bank are calling me, or the insurance company are calling me. What?
Yeah.
You get an automatic. This is a business. This is someone with note who wants to talk to me. So I think it's a really important piece. And I think even Ireland in general, we're very weird in the sense that we're very kind of like parish based. Like I know, like in Limerick, there's a lot of people who are very what's it called? I suppose
they'll only answer a phone call that comes from 061. Right?
Yeah, you get the old,
who up in Dublin is ringing me, and that is absolutely and it's kind of crazy, because we provide national service anywhere in the country.
Yeah,
but all our data centers are in Dublin, so all the calls are technically in Dublin. But we'll give you an 066 number if you want to pretend you're in Tralee. We'll give you an 099 and you can pretend you're out in the Aran Islands enjoying yourself. But technically you can be kind of anywhere in the world connecting over the internet to this service to make your call that goes out and makes you look like you're in the Aran Islands and you're selling your Airbnb trip out to Aaron Moore or something.
I was working out of Shannon and I was in Paris and I was making official work calls essentially through Blueface at the time, Joe. So it was any of my clients that I needed to ring through. It's like, oh yeah, that's John. They didn't know that I was chilling on a balcony in Paris at the time.
And it gives that flexibility to your workforce as well, like that they can do that. I mean, we have a number of customers who are, we're an Irish company and we only really work in the Irish market, but we have Irish companies that we provide service to that have a UK office, or they might have a manufacturing facility in Poland, or a bit further afield for some of our and it allows them to share that connectivity so that all of their internal calls are just ring a 3 or 4 digit extension. We can get them some Polish numbers so that if they ring out from the warehouse in Poland, they look like they're coming from Poland,
from official sources,
and so there is this sort of numbering sort of exchange that sort of happens between carriers across Europe to say, right, I'll provide you with connectivity to Ireland if you then can provide me with the numbering and the connectivity to whatever country that I need to get my service into and that kind of stuff. So it gives you that flexibility, but it's all under an umbrella of one place where, and then you as the sort of the company can look at your whole phone system and go, right, we have 60 staff and 20 of them are in the support line. Right, how are they getting on? Okay, Johnny's doing really well. He's answered loads of calls. Oh, Mary, she's a bit slacking off. Why is she? And it's not then you can have the conversation of like, well, actually, she was busy on site with the customer for the last week getting them set up. So therefore, but it gives you that sort of visibility of the activity where if everybody was just on a mobile and calls are just even being diverted,
you're just saying you're making phone calls and you're not necessarily.
Yeah, who would actually know? Where you get that sort of visibility, and then you can kind of tune your business to oh, actually we know in September, let's say you're some sort of back to college and back to school sort of a business, and so that in August and September we're going to have a huge volume of calls as loads of kids are starting secondary school or going to college, and so we need to ramp up at that point. But it becomes very easy. You don't have to buy in much more infrastructure. You just say, right, you already have a laptop, just fire up your phone and we'll add you to the online, onto the system to say, right, the call center or whatever. And for this month, you're answering the phones, John, but then next month you're back to your normal job because we've got over that sort of peak, and you have that flexibility within these cloud systems, which was not necessarily there so much in the older sort of systems that were out there.
Yeah, and even there's like there's these small little things like the humble call divert, which lifesaver. It's like, I know I'm going to be on the road there, so I'll just divert it to my personal mobile. Bish bash bosh, job done. You'd log it. Like a lot of these kind of platforms had like an app essentially, and you could go in and in 2-3 clicks go, right, if this number rings, send it here. Thanks.
Yeah. And you can have things like it can be conditional. So you kind of go, well, look, try you on your work desk phone, and then if after 20 seconds or 15 seconds it doesn't answer, then fail over to this next option. Or you can say, right, let's try, you might set it up that you have an incoming number that's for your support line. But if everybody in support is busy, then it can fail over to the people who are working in sales, and at least they can then pick up the phone and answer it and take a message. And at least there's nothing worse, I think, that people feel that when they ring a corporate number, that they end up with this, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, and then they're 2 hours sitting on hold waiting. And we all know the stories of people who've rung up the helplines and they're stuck forever, getting nowhere. And
one time I got stuck on a call with Air during COVID.
Well, I didn't want to say
the
E word, but yeah, they have that reputation. And
5 hours.
Yeah. Well,
it's like, well, there was a bill sitting there saying that I owed them like €2,500. And I was like,
probably $2,500 of that was from phoning them up to complain about it, right?
To be honest with you, like this is one of those situations where it wasn't actually directly me; it was to do with like my mother's phone number or something like that. And it turned out that it turned out just to be a Mickey Mouse thing of like incorrect account number on the invoice, so it actually had nothing to do with her. Everybody was happy, but it took 5 hours to get through to someone. And as you said, it was press 1 for sales, press 2 for, and it's the same with insurance companies, which people hate that nonsense. It's like, just give me someone to talk to, and they can send me.
And it's very easy for you to buy something from them very quickly. And then it's very hard to use the service and that kind of stuff. So, what the sort of tools that we provide are, hopefully helping these sort of companies. I mean, obviously, look, if people have made a corporate decision that they're going to have bad customer care, well, the amount of technology is going to fix that. Yeah. But if a company wants to provide this good service, the tools are there to be able to sort of set it up so that you get a quick response, or, you get this automated sort of, if after 1 minute nobody answers, you leave a message, or you just say, look, organize a ring back. And then as soon as the next agent is off a call, it automatically starts the call from that agent to the person who was last in the queue. So you're not sitting there on hold. You can actually kind of go on about your day and, go make a cup of tea, or, go and start answering your next email, in the knowledge that that person will ring you back in the next 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah. Once one agent becomes free, that they're able to do it. So those tools are out there to provide you that sort of support. And they're all, in our case, like, it's all on the internet, and we have an open system where, it's all API driven. So if you have coders in your company, you can start making the phone system do whatever you want it to do. So you can programmatically say, listen for things that are happening, like sort of, watch what's happening in the phone system. And if certain things happen, trigger some other events that then start something else or change things around. It's all dynamic. Not that many of our customers have it. We do it kind of internally for ourselves and for some key customers. But, it's all about, giving you the flexibility. Now, it does also then, as the thing says, it gives you enough, to sort of shoot yourself in the foot if you kind of get it wrong. But, it's important that people are aware that these tools are out there to help make their businesses better. Yeah. If they want to get involved. I mean, you can still just have a traditional, there are 5 phone numbers, and this one goes to sales, and this one goes to the reception, and this one goes to the managing director, and they're your numbers. That's fine. Yeah, but you can do an awful lot more nowadays. Yeah. In terms of dynamic stuff, in terms of engaging with other systems, where somebody can come in and sort of using the dial pad on their phone, put in some magic code or whatever, and then it'll retrieve their information and tell them what they need. All that kind of stuff is very programmatic for everybody. In the old days, you could do that with your gas bill with Bord Gosh a long time ago, where you could type in your current meter reading and it would update it. But that was an expensive system to put in for a big company. But now that sort of technology is available to anybody. So, even if you're a 2-person operation, you can start to sort of see those sort of tools being available to you. And kind of that, like, if this, the sky's the limit in a way.
It's like all that, if this, then that kind of pieces. And it's not even, it's a lot of that kind of stuff is low code to no code in a lot of senses, where it's literally just. Yeah, and I mean, we have a drag and drop interface for literally you kind of pull blocks together and say, do this, branch here, press a menu to get 1, 2, or 3, and then your 3 options come out. And anybody can slap something fairly simple together. And then the more complicated you want it to be, then you might sort of say, well, actually, we need to write a bit of Python, or we need to do something a bit more clever. But, you can get very far down the road very quickly with, very, very little
investment in,
like
in
coding
a bit of
wouldn't have been
training.
coding wouldn't have been my strong suit, but it was like, you're the computer guy, so you can figure out the call diverts. It's like done, everybody's happy. Can you give that phone call there and see if it works? And then that one doesn't work. Let's go back and jiggery pokery until it does work. But question for you: obviously, we know Blueface is leaving the market. Where does that leave the Irish market now with a company like that exiting the space?
Actually, it's a big deal for people who are using Blueface.
Sure.
They've been given a couple of months to find a new provider and move everything over, and especially with a company like Blueface who had lots of features, to be able to find a provider who can give you a reasonably close match to what you already had. Everybody's offering is slightly different, right? So if somebody comes to us, there's some things we'll say, yeah, we can totally do that and we can do it better, and there's some things we go, well, actually, we don't do it that way, so you're going to have to kind of rejig how it works. And that's just the way it is. But actually, there are lots of providers out in the space. And so for those who aren't, and it sounds terrible to say, but those who aren't on Blueface, it's kind of whatever. It doesn't really matter. The one thing that we've definitely noticed, though, is how do we put, number portability. Let's talk about that for a second. Where
you can move your phone number. To my phone store days. The fear word.
But everybody knows that you can move your mobile phone number from one operator to another. If your contract is up with Vodafone, you can walk into a 3 shop and within an hour you've moved network and off you go and you're grand. The same also applies for fixed numbers, for landlines.
Yes.
That there's an automatic porting environment. And there's a shared database between all the providers, so everybody knows where everybody's number is. And so, if one of our customers makes a call, we can look it up and say, oh, that's meant to be going to Virgin. Oh, that's a customer who's on BT. Oh, that's a customer who's on Air. That's a customer who's on Blueface. And so we can see, where all those numbers are. And we haven't seen a massive drop off in the number of calls that are going to Blueface yet. Which to me says that a lot of people haven't actually moved yet. And time is kind of ticking on. Now, there's 6 or 8 weeks left, right? But to get all your ducks lined up, it takes, about a week to get that number portability. And because you have to prove that you own the numbers that you want. You make your request, it goes into the system, the buttons get clicked, the handle gets turned.
Multi-line is like 3 to 5 days on average. Multi-lines are 3 to 5 days on average too.
Yeah.
So if you're talking
4 exactly.
to 6 weeks,
So if you have a block of 50 or 100 numbers in your business and you haven't started that process, I see our sales guys and they're flat out, and every couple of hours there's like, geez, that was loads. We've been non-stop on the phone all the time and dealing with, but there's still loads of them who haven't, and and that's where the big problem is going to be, is when the 23rd of October rolls around and they turn off their service. Well, I suppose the first question is, will they actually pull the plug on that day? So far we've no reason to believe they won't.
Sure.
But assuming that they do, then what happens to the people who didn't get around, and especially people who are using Blueface in a very simple way where they have a landline and it's just redirecting out to a mobile.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are using it just to have a landline appearance, but actually then gets, as you said, sort of diverted out and moved around. Those who have much more complicated systems, I think, are engaged in that process and saying, look, we need to move. And they're talking to various providers, including ourselves, to sort of figure out what they want. But there's probably an awful lot of people, sort of 1 and 2 person operations, who just didn't even look at the bill because it came in as part of your bill to say, we are shutting down in a few weeks. But if you just, I know when I get a bill from at home from, the electricity or the gas or whatever, I just know it's being paid from my bank account, so I never even bother opening it. I never bother reading it. So if you similarly have an email filter that says all emails from Blueface go into this thing and I never bother reading it because I'm just paying my bill every month, you're going to get into a big shock on the 23rd when all of a sudden your phone stops working. And
but this is it. Like I'm on one of those Gomo MVNO price for life kind of deals.
Yeah.
So that's the bill. When that email comes in, I just go delete or archive, whatever. Who cares? I know it's a tenner. I know it's being paid. And when you're talking kind of in those situations where someone's probably paying for a redirect, it can be 10, 12 euro. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
it's not a huge sum like that you'd be paying every month. And so you kind of wouldn't, and it's not like you'd be kind of going, oh, well, the Blueface bill is coming out on the 20th of the month. I need to make sure there's enough money in my account to meet it. because it's like the price of a sandwich. You know, it's not much more. Like, you know, so, you know, it's the sort of thing that you would easily let slide under the radar and then find yourself in trouble very quickly. So, you know, if nothing else, if anybody who's listening here is with Blueface, get your finger out and start doing it. Come talk to us if you want, but go talk to somebody, because, you know, at the moment you will be switched off on the 23rd of October, and then you'll be left scrambling. And it's, you know, there's obviously, as an operator, you know, all the operators in Ireland are all licensed by the regulator, by Comreg, and so Blueface will still have some obligations after the 23rd in terms of numbers that are assigned to them, and in terms of people who were their customers to still be able to port their numbers out to another provider. So you're not going to be completely banjaxed, but it just becomes that bit more difficult when, you know, the service
it's normally
has
about
stopped.
it's normally about 3 months before a line goes dead from inactivity. But I will do the public service announcement for you. If you're a business that it's on Blueface and you haven't moved, get onto IP Telecoms. I have no problem doing that shameless plug right there. But no, seriously, it's like, like even the comms about it have been quite low to weak, is the nicest way of putting it. Is like, I know until we were having the conversation like a couple of weeks ago about booking this in, that was probably the first time I had heard of it. And like, you know, given the nature of what we do day to day in terms of, you know, reviewing the tech industry, you'd think we might have got wind of that, but no.
Yeah, no, there was a few little stories that appeared, like I think it broke in the Sunday Business Post one weekend, and then there's sort of a follow-up in the Indo or something, and then over the summer. But it was the middle of the summer when people are on holidays and not really paying attention, and then,
of course,
oh look, there's, you know, it sort of crept up on people without really noticing and time marching on. So,
which is mental. I have a question for you, and it's probably going to be it makes no difference to us kind of thing, because obviously today the Irish telecommunications industry had its new player enter the game in Sky Mobile in Ireland. I never thought I'd see the day, but they're coming in heavy with the €15 a month, that sweet spot that seems to be the now industry standard for MVNOs. And then they're going to do higher purchase on the phone. So that's like new for the Irish market. Do companies like that kind of, or those kind of price points, affect the likes of you guys, or is it kind of similar that because they're piggybacking on a network, you're still using the same network? Who cares?
It doesn't massively impact on us right now, because, as I said, we're very much a fixed and business to business. Those sort of MVNOs, I think, I mean, without wanting to speak for them, are, you know, very much looking at the mass market and trying to just get as many punters as they can signed up quite quickly, so that therefore they amortize the cost of having gotten into the market over picking up 50,000 or 100,000, whatever the number of subscribers they have that they need to reach in their first year to get handsets on using their network. So we wouldn't necessarily see them as a direct impact on us, but customers of ours will have those networks with their devices on it, and so we will be piggybacking on what they're piggybacking on, the 5G that they're on, and they're piggybacking on top of Vodafone's actual physical infrastructure. So, I mean, we will definitely there'll be definitely some impact, but more on a connectivity than necessarily a customers and sort of routing or anything like that sort of issues. It's more just a case of, our client has decided they're going to move all their phones from 3 to Sky now because that's what they want to do. But even then, I don't think, I mean, from what I've read of it today, their initial target is very much the ordinary single punter, rather than going after big corporate sort of, we're going to sign up, you know, everybody who works for KPMG, all their mobile contract is going to move to Sky tomorrow. You know, maybe they are, you know, but the buzz seems to be in the same way that when Gomo was launched, of like, let's get all the young people on it, and, you know, we'll sign them up for life.
Being the same, on Post was the one for the older generation. I mean, I find like the last 2 years has been the I suppose the growth of the MVNO. Like, I remember back in the day, I worked for Carphone Warehouse when they launched ID Mobile, and to be fair, beautiful concept ahead of its time. The only place, like as you said, a lot of the MVNOs are looking at the younger users, the 48. I worked in Carphone Warehouse during the O2 closure and moving all those business accounts, which I'm sure, even from your perspective, was an absolute mess, going from blue line to green line in 3, and then it's like, which line do you belong to? I don't know anymore. trying to
I
get
mean,
all
I was an O2 customer, and then the move happened seamlessly for me until about 3 years later when I needed to get a new SIM, and the fella in the shop went, "What the hell have you still got this one for?" Because I still have my old O2 SIM that I'd moved from one phone to another as I bought new handsets. And he's like, "That shouldn't have been working for ages."
Oh no, like we
still...
used to have a little clipper. There we go. Just chop it up, stick it in the phone. Does it work? Great.
Yeah.
And even trying to have a conversation with the customers. Are you 0202 or are you 023? Yeah. And then then on the background it would be green line, blue line, and then it was corporate blue line and all these extra layers. And it was an absolute minefield even trying to like do upgrades. So essentially what ended up happening was people would come into us and be like, "Look, I'm moving you to 3. I'm doing that." Yeah. And you just tell people what you do. But I suppose the question, just to bring it back around to the actual question, in terms of like how a network or how a system like yourselves operate, is there extra layers in terms of operating with an MVNO, or is it like, just direct to the source the same way it would be with Vodafone?
No, it's this the same. And to be fair, any new operator who's coming into the market, every operator doesn't necessarily have a direct connection to every other operator. Sure. Some operators act as transit in the middle. So, and Air, because they're the long-standing incumbent, there's an obligation on them to interconnect with every operator. So if in the worst case scenario, we have a call that goes to a new operator, we just send it to Air, and then Air have to figure out how to pass it on. And Air charge us for the privilege of passing them the call, and they probably charge the other guys money for the privilege of sending them the call.
Of doing it.
Yeah, but there is always a path from every number to every other number, because there is that kind of common carrier in the middle. And now there are a few of the other bigger operators also have direct connectivity to every other operator. Sure. We have direct connectivity to a good number of the landline operators, not so many to the mobile operators directly. We would tend to use transit to get to those. So when somebody ports somebody goes in and signs up with Sky today, and all of a sudden I want to ring them from here, I'll probably be sending the call to Air or to BT or to one of the other sort of bigger transit providers, and they will then forward it on to Air onto Sky. But if you're another, but the problem with that is, well, not the problem, but like that's where a lot of the money is passed around, is in this sort of transiting and sort of bilateral arrangements of, we would look at our outgoing calls and say, right, we seem to be sending an awful lot of calls to carrier X. Right, let's start a conversation with carrier X. Say, look, do you want to open a bilateral sort of trunk between the two of us, so that we're not relying on a transit service? It'll be cheaper for both of us, but there's an investment of time and effort to get that connectivity between the 2 points. And there's a trade-off. So we look at some other carrier and go, we only send them 200 calls a month. Just send them all to a transit carrier, because what's the point? And you kind of have to pick your battles, because there's a limited amount of resources that you have, both mostly in terms of people, to just get it sorted out. And it's the same with international calls. If we're ringing from us to Germany or South Africa or Australia or whatever, we would have a number of different carriers that we would use for different locations. But we wouldn't have a direct connection to every carrier in Europe, because there are hundreds and thousands of them. So we have to rely on these sort of bigger aggregators. So, your BTs and your Deutsche Telecoms and those sort of people who have the reach within their country. So as long as we can land our call with one of the big boys in that country, they then kind of handle the passing it on down to whoever the appropriate body is in that country.
Fascinating.
So there's a whole ecosystem of sort of bilateral exchanging, and then the bilateral cost sort of back to you at the end of the day to say, you sent us 1,000 calls this month. Okay, that'll cost you whatever the amount is. And we go, well, you sent us 500, so let's half that bill, because half it came back. And so it all, or actually, you both, because of you want your turnover to be as big as possible, you both charge each other full whack, right? And then it all adds up,
and the book balances, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, exactly. But everybody has a bigger turnover, so the sales guys get a bigger bonus at the end of the year, and everything's happy, right?
Everybody's delighted. I never would have guessed that the kind of infrastructure in the background. I just assumed app, move, go. Like, do you know what I mean? It's there's a bit more going on.
There's a lot of stuff. And I mean, we're a reasonably small operator. Obviously, if you look at Air, look, Air are in a different category to everybody, because they have all the local exchanges, all the fiber, all the copper throughout the whole country.
Yeah.
But every other operator has, to a bigger or lesser extent, a chunk of infrastructure around the place that's handling that all the calls, all the interconnects between all the different operators, all the, like, there's a lot of stuff around regulatory stuff around, being able to keep track of all your stats and report those to Comreg so they can get a full view of what the market is like. And there's things about number porting. There's a sort of an independent entity that handles how that porting is done between all the different operators, and we have to have a constant feed from them telling us, okay, that number has moved from here to here, that number has moved from here to here, and then we have to update our routing tables in real time to say that's going here. So there's definitely stuff there, but none of it, no individual component is terribly hard.
Yeah,
there's just an awful lot of them, and it's the traditional sort of spinning plates of you have to keep them all going all the time.
I remember, like, this brings me back to so many of the old car phone warehouse stories. I remember when I was in the phone shop, we had this phone, the Samsung Fame. Oh my days! To this day, if I hear that name, I still get breakout and cold sweats, because essentially what happened was there was an offer on where you could port your number from network A to network B, get the phone for €35. Its standard recommended retail price was €150, and CEX at the time were buying them for €100. So what you used to have was the lads going into Tesco's buying a stack of SIM cards and going, sure, that's the number to port. And then the number would end up as a dead end after the port, but the person had left with the SIM card. So we used to have we end up getting sent like manual checks where it was like, you need to ring the number to make sure it's been activated and topped up with a tenner before you even try to port it. It's like, this is madness. Must have been turning out 100 of those a day, and it was just lads coming, like young fellas, like lads in college and stuff like that, going, sure.
But hey, if it gets into their beer money, like, that's entrepreneurism in a nutshell, right? You can't knock that.
I can go buy 3 phones for €90 and walk away with €300. Yeah, I'm making €200, and that's essentially my wages for the week.
Yeah. I mean, look, in any scenario, if there's arbitrage in there, somebody's going to find it, right?
Exactly. That was the number porting, and it would break my heart. And especially for the business customers, because you have someone come in, and you probably get a similar thing where people don't necessarily understand the back end of their contract agreement. They think they just have a business phone number with Vodafone. They don't know if that single line, multi-line, enterprise, business, SME, and that obviously changes how they onboard with you guys. Yeah, no, it does. And a lot of people still are in the sort of the mode of analog lines, where you had, a PRI with, a big piece of coax coming into your basement and fanning out. And it's like, numbers now aren't like that, right? It doesn't matter. No. You have that full flexibility of put the numbers where you want, and and then people do, and especially when they're coming from an analog thing, what will often happen is they'll have a monitored alarm on one of those numbers, and their broadband connection will be technically using one of those lines as well. Oh, right. And then we turn around and say, well, we want to port your 100 numbers. Oh, but we can't port those 2 numbers. So now all of a sudden that becomes, as opposed to one 100 number block being ported, it's 98 individual ports leaving the 2 numbers behind. And that just then ends up sort of, so luckily it's all kind of automated, and so the systems kind of handle it and take care of it. But it just makes everything a little bit more tricky. Or what happens is we say, oh, we'll port all 100 numbers like you told us to, and then they go, our alarm stopped working, and somebody broke in over the weekend, and it's like, well, we told you if you had an alarm on the number, you had to do something different. So static IPs and bits like that, which again adds layers. Because Jesus, I remember the fear of trying to move a static IP landline, and that would be generally for kind of higher end businesses, because they'd need a static IP. And certainly, part of our business is doing broadband as well for customers. I mean, we're an over the top for those, again, over air, NBI and Cyro. But one of our things is we hand out static IPs to all of our customers because they need them, because they're running a business. So they need to be able to sort of say, I need to connect to this system, and I'm always going to know my IP is from there. But then the problem becomes, well, that customer then says, thanks very much, IP Telecom, you've been great, but I've decided I'm going to move to another provider. Look, that happens. But then all of a sudden, well, that static IP technically belongs to us. So,
You don't have it anymore. And then the customers like has already hard coded in so much stuff on their side to say our IP is going to be this, and then they have to go and start changing stuff around. Where at least with the phone number portability, that isn't a problem.
Sure.
Because the number is the customers, not the operators. Like there is a primary holder. There is an original owner of the number. So Comreg will hand out 20,000 Dublin numbers to IP Telecom, and we'll hand them out to our customers. But once they're handed to a customer, the customer owns it and has free reign to move that wherever they feel like. Now, if they give up using the number and the company goes out of business or whatever, that number will eventually return to us because we were the original block holder.
Yeah.
But as long as it's in use by that company, they can move it around. Where on a network side of things, IP addressing is definitely a whole other ballgame. It's a lot trickier, and it's often buried a lot deeper in your infrastructure, and all of a sudden it's like only comes to light after the fact. Oh yeah, that really important thing. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore because.
And Joe, the alarms is the most common one for it. Like, yeah, Jesus, it's almost like bringing me back to the wars now.
Yeah, it's alarms and broadband connections are the things that we will find. And because people go, oh no, I'm happy with my broadband. Like I've a fiber to the home or fiber to the premises with air and church, it's grand. And then actually fiber is slightly different, so it's not such a problem. But if they're still on a copper link into the, they've got a whole egg,
fiber to the cabinet versus fiber to the home or whatever. Because I think actually I'll just give. So the difference between fiber to the home and fiber to the cabinet is. So we'll say when it comes to Cyro, which is like your modern broadband where people are getting the 1 gig speeds, that is fiber to the cabinet, and then there's fiber from the cabinet to the home. Whereas historically, we'll say when you got your better broadband and people were like, you can get 100 120 meg speeds, which was the standard when I was working in the phone shop. It would be fiber to the cabinet, and then you'd still have a copper wire around from the cabinet to the home. And it depended on where you were in that exchange as to what speeds you could actually actively get.
Exactly. And if you were within 600 yards, it was good, and if you were 3 miles down the road, it got pretty bad pretty quick. Where now, with fiber everywhere, and especially, and to be fair, I mean, NBI got a lot of slagging at the start when they were but they are now rolling stuff out real fast all around the country, and it's made other providers, doing that sort of stuff. Their fiber rollout has really picked up the speed as well. Like competition makes people have to do stuff. So initially there was like, why are we spending billions on getting fiber run up the side of Mount Errigal and Donegal or wherever? It's like, well, because it's the future and because everybody in the country deserves equal access to this resource. Wi-Fi. Not, because I happen to have lived in a rural area that I should be deprived of what I'm able to get in the city when it's a digital thing.
We used to have a line that we'd use. It's like, sure, as long as you were getting at least 4 to 6 megabytes, you can run a HD video call. And people would be like, oh, is that true? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, the first house that I bought was in one of these old 1930s housing estates in Dublin. It's a 2 up, 2 down, nice little house, and it was grand until I decided to try and get the internet into the house. And I had my dial-up modem, my 56k modem, and I went, right, can I get on? And I got 2k because it was a line that was being split 4 times off the pole into 4 different houses. And it took about 3 months of backwards and forwards with the local engineer before you eventually was able to figure out, I need to put another yoke in the cabinet up on the main road, and then I can do this and that and the other. And then immediately I was able to get whatever it was, 10 meg DSL at the time. And I was like, right, I'm not doing my 2K dial-up anymore.
Yeah.
But, that sort of scenario of like not quite 2K, but maybe 1 meg broadband across the country was very prevalent until a couple of years ago when NBI and things said, we need to fix this. So it's been great for the consumer. It's been great for business to now be able to get connectivity into various places. Right in the wilds. I mean, I often go on holidays down to West Kerry, out beyond Dingle, and about 5 years ago, I was driving along, and all of a sudden, I could see the fiber being wrapped, like where it had been wrapped around the old phone lines as it's going down the road. And I sort of looked up the air code of the little house that we were in for the week, and I could have got gigabit fiber into my little holiday home that I was renting for a week. And beforehand, it used to be that as you drove out of Dingle, as you lost mobile signal, it went slower and slower and slower. And then you went around the corner, and that was it. You were cut off. and you might get a text message every second day if you were lucky. And now all of a sudden, here we are looking out at the blaskets, and you have,
full fiber broadband, full gigabit.
And so it's amazing. Like it's transformational for the country once people start being able to use these sort of services. So
and then people hear the word 5G and just sure, look, do we need to go down that rabbit hole? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you've got the natural fear mongering. I think that there's, especially in Ireland, we're very adverse to change. Like, you hear like I hear it all the time because like obviously I worked in phone shops and I'm involved in like a local football club and they're trying to get a 5G mast put on the pitch, and it's like, sure, why would we want that? People are going to die. And you're like, lads, nobody's going to die. Take the money.
Yeah. And like you see, I noticed recently driving back up from Limerick, I think it's near the toll plaza coming up the dual carriageway there. That
my car.
It's one of those fake. There's one of those fake mobile or fake trees that's a mobile phone mast, but that is covered in things that make it look like a branch. And unless you were literally looking out for it, you'd never know it was there. But you can still stream your Netflix to the kids in the back of the car while you're driving along at 120 kilometers an hour. And so your choice is you can either have angry kids with nothing to do in the back of the car for 2 hours, or we can have 5G. And when people are presented with that sort of choice, they go, yeah, okay, maybe 5G isn't so bad after all. Maybe.
And it's like you're probably getting more radiation off the phone that they're looking at in the thing than the actual mass. But hey, who are we to say logic over?
No. It's easy to make up a story and say, it's going to kill us all. But everyone's going to kill us all eventually.
It's way more fun. Question for you, just because it's actually after popping into my head. eSIMs, because I think especially over the last like 6 to 12 months, there's been a big shift in people using eSIMs. So like platforms like I suppose like Ding, AirAllo, Sim Local that we've actually covered on the blog before. Like they're basically all just broadband, so, using the broadband infrastructure. So how does that affect you guys? Because it's probably one of those, who cares?
Again, not really, like because again they're targeting a different market than we are.
Sure.
Like again, most of those sort of eSIMs I would say are, I don't know that much about them, but from what I've seen, it seems to be like, you're targeting a diaspora in a country to be able to get sort of their cheaper calls back to where they come from a lot of the time. But if you think back to sort of 20 years ago, there were the calling cards you buy in a shop that would give you like 5 cents out of the payphone rather than shoveling in your 50 pence pieces all the time to make your long distance calls. Sure. And it's the same sort of model as that, I think, more than necessarily, again, looking for corporate, that you're not going to be in that sort of space. So we generally wouldn't see that much impact of them. But they're if you think back to 20 years ago, before there was, WhatsApps and Vibers and all those sort of other telegrams, and maybe Telegram we leave on a different conversation altogether.
The telephone box.
Well, let's say Signal then rather than Telegram. But those sort of over the top sort of messaging and phone and sort of, there was Skype, right, for a long time. Then Skype died a death. It got merged into Teams and Microsoft and things like that. So, running sort of communications channels on top of other things, it's kind of been a growing event over the last, and it's now become the standard. Sure. Where before you had sort of separate phone and the sort of communications infrastructure. Now it's all become digitized. It's all becoming over the internet. It's all becoming over the top, and then you can mix and match. So you can get telephony into things like Teams and Zoom, where I can ring a number. And, if you ring my office phone number, it'll ring up in my Teams client on my laptop. And then I can ring out going, I want to ring 086 123 4567. And it goes back out from Teams over a telephony bridge. But it's all within Teams. And it's like, Teams isn't a phone, but actually Teams can be a phone and Zoom can be a phone and, anything can be a phone. It's all, that connectivity part has become so... sort of ubiquitous, I suppose, and so very easy. It's very easy, very user friendly. There's a lot of it's like the traditional sort of swan analogy of like it's all very calm on the top and then underneath it's pedaling furiously. and that's my neck of the world is that pedaling furiously to make all of these bits work together. But from the end user, it's just another dial pad, and I ring it, and if it rings out to a phone, it's great. If it just rings internally within Teams, it's fine. If it goes over to WhatsApp, well, that's fine too. People don't care as long as they're able to make that communication.
I love that analogy because it's not too dissimilar. I work in predominantly marketing, so I use something very similar. It's like, what's marketing? It's like, we're the big smiley face in front of the door. The door's closed because there's a raging fire inside it, but we don't look at that. It's like, look here, not here.
Yeah. Don't mention the war. That's really what it boils down to. Yeah.
Essentially, no, this is fascinating. So, I suppose for your industry, your company, what does the next 12 months look like? Because obviously there's going to be changes with a competitor like Blueface up and leaving the market. So what does this landscape look like in the next 12 months, especially from your perspective? Where are we going?
There's a bit of consolidation, but more of it is around features and around plugging in the terrible buzzword around AI and how does how do LLMs fit into this market of, can we get rid of half of our call center staff by you as the customer ring in and you think you're talking to somebody, and there's very quickly a text-to-speech conversion happening that's replaying something, and then they say something and it gets converted back into something the computer understands, fed into a chat GPT equivalent, and actually an AI sort of effectively fielding your frontline calls, and nobody's any the wiser, right? Other than you'll have to sort of get some localized accents of, I need it to sound like it's a fella from Kerry rather than some very computerized voice or something like that. But, those sorts of things, and about doing, transcriptions of calls, doing sort of sentiment analysis of calls to say, right, we had a problem on Tuesday, and when everybody rang into our phone system, they were all really angry. Well, that's obviously very well correlated. But then when they rang in on Thursday, everyone was happy because the service was fine. And, you don't have to necessarily be monitoring the service. You can monitor what your engagement is and what the calls are like and sort of saying, right, well, these, so I think that's where the big challenge is, or the big changes are going to be in the next year or 2 years is, and AI, sometimes I look at it and go, it's just like, Bitcoin and then NFT, and now we're into AI, right?
I'm waiting for the AI-powered toothbrush at this stage, man. To be honest,
but and a lot of what they're talking about AI is just business analytics on a bigger scale than it ever was before. And then you have sort of the LLM sort of language model stuff.
90% of what people are calling AI is an LLM. It's like there's not as much AI out there as what people presume.
No, and it's very much on a fad, and but there is definitely a kernel of value in it.
Yes,
for sure. And I think the smart people are going to be the ones who actually get a good marketable product that does, that enhances the functionality. People are still going to want to talk to each other. They don't want to talk to a computer, but if it can be computer assisted, and so, the computer is listening while I'm on the call to my customer, and the computer is sort of prompting me to say, well, have you thought about this one yet? Because, I forgot that happens sometimes. Okay, well, let's check that scenario. And you're getting that real feedback, but it still has a human in the loop. I think that's really where the value is going to be. People are going to appreciate it.
I love that, because I do find when you call certain unnamed companies that essentially the guys on the other end are essentially reading off the script, and it's like, you're not helping.
But if the script could be a little bit smarter,
well, that's
so you get the warm and fuzzies of talking to a human, but you get the benefits of the depth of knowledge that the computer can provide to you.
It's like, John, we've seen this problem before. Remember this guy we spoke to 3 weeks ago who had this problem? This is the solution. Talk to them about this. It's like, wait, now we have an answer. That makes so much sense. And it would make the consumer sentiment when talking to businesses really increase, because I think that's one of the biggest problems I've ever experienced is with kind of business calls or stuff like that, where you're kind of like, the person on the other side is like ticking their little check sheet for their sales manager or something like that. You're like, you're not actually talking to me.
And it's very frustrating. I mean, I know I've been both the person receiving the call and the person placing the call.
Same.
Where you kind of go, can we just jump to page 4, please? Because I've already done all this troubleshooting. But somehow, you need to know the magic code word to be able to jump to page 4 and get to somebody, further down the line. They have a job to do, and there's no point in getting antsy with the person who's fielding your call, because they're just fielding hundreds of these calls every day. And, a lot of the time, maybe if you just did turn it off and on again, it would probably start working again. Like
the IT
it is
crowd.
always
Yes.
but it is often the solution. And I know it sounds stupid to say,
It is.
It still works. Like that's the first thing to try. You kick it over and start it up again and see.
Turn it off.
But so there's a reason those scripts have been put together. Is because they are fielding the most common questions first. But when you've got a weird problem and you know that you've gone through all of these things and you still can't get there, where if you had some AI helper in the middle who could sort of read between the lines and sort of figure, okay, this person has said enough of the things to say
that they're about here.
They know roughly what they're talking about, then we can sort of move on past the have you turned it off and on again conversation and actually get to the on page 7 of the configuration screen, you can change this setting from Z to P, and then everything works brilliantly. You go, all right, problem solved. And so speeding up that kind of customer. And it's good for the company because it means their agents aren't on the phone for as long reading out this boring script. It's good for the agent. It's good for the customer. They get a solution quicker. So I think that sort of space of where you're going to get that enhanced business logic and in there, but not... it's not just sort of an AI answering all the calls and,
No, I love this idea because it means from a business perspective that there's a lot less wait times and downtime. From an agent's perspective, they're actually able to get through more calls in a day and flush through the shrapnel a lot quicker and actually be able to spend more time on the calls that get them paid. Because if we're all going to be honest here, these guys get paid by volume of calls that they're able to get through in a day and the quality of those phone calls. So like an AI assistant kind of as a go-between, as you said, like your system overlays here, pushes the thing here, and then if there's something there that's able to give that extra support, then lads, that would be really fun.
But at the same time, like if there's a real genuine problem, the human can still step in and say, no, actually, I know this. Or, there was a situation a couple of years ago where, I know of from somebody who's working center where they were on a call with somebody and then all of a sudden the person at the end of the line started talking weird. And it's like, I think you're having a stroke. And having that human there who can actually say, right, stay on the line and I'm going to ring an ambulance for you right now. And you get that react where, like, I'm not sure an AI would recognize somebody necessarily having a stroke over the phone. Like, it's so, you need that human engagement just for, humanity's sake, if nothing else. But there are times when it has been life-saving, right? So,
like, I talk at 100 miles an hour. I know that. And, like, when I'm doing these things, I'm very conscious of speaking slower. Whereas if I was talking to a machine, they'd be like, we said what now? It's like, I didn't get any of that. Or even the kind of colloquial, if we're going to be like, if you're trying to transcribe Michael Healy-Rae,
be an interesting challenge. There's definitely a final year project for some computer science student in
LLMs are going to have great crack when they figure out Kerry. You know what I mean? It's got, like, this chat has been eye-opening for me. Like, to be honest with you, like, a lot of this stuff I wouldn't have known the detail on the back end. I would have known, obviously number porting and how the kind of network operations were. But in terms of like the connectivity, the tracking, the kind of infrastructure stuff, this is really, really good. But before I let you go, is there anything that we haven't, talked about in regards to IP telecoms, the infrastructures, the general telecoms space in Ireland that you feel that we should mention?
We could talk all night. You definitely could. Like, it's an interesting space. Like, there's always stuff happening. And you have to do the sort of the plug of, all right, well, go to the website and have a look and give us a ring if you want to talk more about it on a business level.
Do the plug.
But there's people sort of go, oh, you're working for telecoms, that must be very boring. It's like, on a day-to-day basis, it might be a bit boring where you're kind of, we're just looking, we just shift, 100,000 calls or whatever. That's great. But then there are these sort of edge projects where you kind of go, okay, this is the future and this is where you want to be. And it's a fun place to be. And, actually more than necessarily if you're a customer, if you're a techie and you want something interesting to get your hands into, come and have a chat with us as well. Because, like, we are always looking for, if you're leaving Blueface, we'll have a chat with you too, as a customer or as an employee, right? We'll take everybody.
Exactly. So if people do want to reach out, find out more, or even just inquire about the different services that you offer, and for any Blueface customers that may or may not be out there that need to go somewhere, how do they get in contact and where should they go to find out more information?
IP Telecom.ie. All the information's on the website. and there's a phone number there which I can never remember off the top of my head, where you can 6877777, so some number of sevens.
Enough phone numbers in a day. You're not supposed to know this.
I know I'm not meant to know this sort of stuff. But look, it's all online, and the salespeople will only be too glad to talk to you. But it's the one message I would have is, again, to say to those people who are still on Blueface, get the finger out, move somewhere. Move to us, sure, but move somewhere before the deadline passes, because otherwise you're boned.
Yeah. Josh, and on that note, I think that is a good place to leave it for this evening. Dermot, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like, the amount that I've learned today, this is probably one of my favorite ones just in terms of nerding out and learning new stuff. But, thank you so much for hopping on and joining me this evening. So it's been
great. Thanks very much, Tom.
And to everybody watching, good night, good morning, good day, good evening, goodbye. I suppose whenever the hell you're listening or watching this, we are available on Spotify video. We are obviously on YouTube right now. Anywhere you find a podcast, we're going to be on. And, if you want to find any articles that are on Goosed, it's on Goosed.ie. Very straightforward. And on that note,